We will now invite our first panel of corporate leaders who will share lessons on turning threats into opportunities. Your chair for this panel is Michael Walsh, Chief Executive of Pacific Basin Economic Council. Could the first panel please come up?
Good afternoon. Thanks, Paul, for organising this event and inviting me to come and chair this distinguished panel. And having listened to a couple of Irishmen so far, I just thought I'd add a quick personal stat. It's actually 25 years to this month when I started on my own career path with Aer Lingus back in London all those years ago, just out of university. And here I am in Hong Kong with these distinguished Director General, David Costello, and also back then my boss was Willie Walsh at Aer Lingus, who is now, during the pandemic, been named the new Director General at IATA, which is probably going to be his toughest challenge yet, despite the challenges of Aer Lingus in those early days. So I'd like to introduce now to my left, a lot of you probably know some of these panelists, but Jolie Howard, who's been with business aviation for as long as I've been in Hong Kong, 13 years and even longer. And also to her left is Danny Young from Pronetic, CEO and co-founder, who will be talking a little bit about his company and what a fantastic positive story for Hong Kong it's been despite the pandemic. And lastly to Ignacio Ruby, China Aircraft Leasing Group, the VP Sales and Marketing at APAC. But to kick us off, I'm going to ask Jolie if she could share some of her own leadership perspectives, given your extensive experience in business aviation. What are the opportunities you're seeing for Le Voyage, you recently joined, from your own market observations, and where are you allocating the wider group's resources at this time, and your own efforts to positioning yourselves in order to take full advantage of the future?
Thanks, Mike. Actually, yeah, not 13, but over 20 years, similar to you. So, yeah, thanks for the opportunity to share, insights together today. I think, business aviation, similar to commercial aviation, we suffer, but probably in a different ways, because when borders are closed, when all the quarantine restriction, doesn't matter what form of transportation you take, you still need the quarantine, you still need to stay in a hotel. So all those restrictions really restricting our customers to travel, unless they are very essential travels. So opportunity for business aviation is we are able to still provide the flights. That's not restricted by the schedules. When there is demand, we can actually fly. But the restrictions are actually not encouraging people to fly. So I think we suffer a similar way. I think all our colleagues in the industry would agree, our business probably down minimum at 50 to 70%. And some area are doing really well, but not in Hong Kong because, we are border literally shut down. But, within China, there are activity probably resume back to 50 to 60%. Within US, actually very busy. More people choosing private aviation over airline, also because the lack of support in the schedule. So actually more people travel on business aviation in the course of the last 12 months during COVID. So some area have benefited from the problem, but lots of area are still suffer from the problem. So, from our perspective, what we do, we provide a lifestyle travel, products, and while people cannot travel, so what we've done is we try to be innovative, for being based in Asia. So what we do is look at what are the local opportunities are. In fact, we are now, seeing their opportunity, internal and external. Internally, obviously, now is the time to look at our cost base, the opportunity for, lower cost offices, lower human capital costs. All those are good opportunity for us to build a good team, continue to be able to leverage on those really good talent, but, much more approachable these days than it was before. So those are great opportunity for us internally. And externally, we have to look at what are the demand out there. When there's still lots of people trying to travel, but maybe their immigration flight maybe is one way to go to Europe, to go to Australia with all those flight schedule restrictions. So we're picking up on some of that. So we're looking at what we can provide, and with a group of clients, still with quite a heavy means of saving from they have not been able to travel on their holiday. I think one of the speakers spoke earlier. There's actually accumulation of those disposable income. So what we've done, we also look at yachting, and all those to actually continue to serve our clients, who want us to continue to be with them. So we try to be innovative and look at where the opportunities are internally and externally. It's very challenging. It's not easy because you have to shift your staff, your team, to look at that as well, together to think that way. So which involve lots of training and lots of creativity to do it together. So I think that's what we've been experiencing. I think in business aviation there are probably a quicker rebound of activities. We're not looking at 2 or 3 years, but hopefully in the next 6 to 12 months, we'll see some easing on border. So we still see that essential travel will take place. But I think in the meantime, we need to stay, to be strong and to still look at what's out there that we can do more.
Thanks, Shirley. I mean, I think, as you mentioned, the key issue is really reopening safely the borders for not just business aviation, but for also commercial, because we're all kind of bound by the same regulations, regardless whether we're scheduled or unscheduled. When that happens, there will be pent-up demand coming, I believe, in Asia anyway, for business aviation in particular, as people are more cautious in potentially using commercial over private means. So coming over to Danny now, because Danny, in some ways, you're part of the solution, aren't you, Danny? In that we're all craving for, and we probably know you mostly for the COVID test kits in Hong Kong, but there's far more to the business than just that. And just to let you know, Pranek's a global leader now in digital health and genetic testing. And he's going to be speaking, I'm just going to share a little bit, Danny, if you can, about the challenge that you faced during this time, this period. You had rapid growth. You needed to employ several numbers of staff. Maybe you can share some of those positive statistics. And then a little bit about the R&D investment that you've been doing, because it's not just about the here and now, but looking to the future. Over to you, Danny.
Great. So great to be here live in person at conference. Right? I probably haven't spoken about a year and a half in live conference, so thank you, Paul and Mike. Certainly, I also didn't get the dress code, yeah? But since I run a technology startup company, I can always get by with it. So certainly, I think, Pranetics, we were headquartered here in Hong Kong, so Hong Kong's always our headquarters. I think in the last years, like many of us, there was a lot of uncertainty early on, right? Back in February, March, et cetera, wise. So we really had to pivot very, very fast because we're primarily a genetic testing company. So we actually had to pivot to doing COVID testing here in the community, offering a at-home testing solution for people to easily get COVID-19 tests. And then, so that was last April, and then in the UK, our business there also took off because we actually started working with the English Premier League and actually helping their season resume with rapid testing-wise, right? And then, of course, here in Hong Kong-wise, we work very closely with the Hong Kong government. Long story short, to date, we've now processed over 3 million COVID-19 tests alone in the last 14 months in both Hong Kong and the UK. Our team size has grown significantly. We're about 150 employees full-time pre-pandemic. Now we're actually over 500 employees globally. We've also hired probably over 1,500 part-time staff alone in the last 14 months, right? We've also raised considerable amounts of capital to reinvest in the future. We've now raised almost $100 million USD in capital, and certainly we're looking at this as an opportunity to further invest So we've making significant investments in the last 14 months, right? Because certainly while the pandemic has certainly impacted us all, we felt it was actually the right time to put capital to use for the future, right? So even the R&D spend in terms of new technologies, we put in over $30 million USD in innovating new technologies that can enable the future of aviation and travel, right? And then I was also, while sitting here, I was thinking, how come you guys invited me to speak at an aviation conference, right? I'm sure some of you guys have also wanted. So we've actually, in a lot of the testing that we do, we're actually in airports physically, right? So in the UK, we're actually in Heathrow, Stanton, Luton, etc., where we actually operate the rapid testing sites in the airport. Here in Hong Kong International, we're the only laboratory in HKIA, so we converted a smoking lounge to be our laboratory. So certainly for the air travel bubble, we're the designated laboratory on arrival to do the testing. And certainly, of course, we also do a lot of the community testing centers. So if you want to travel, most likely you would need to do one of our Prenetics COVID-19 tests, right? So certainly, I think while there has been a lot of uncertainty, we still feel that the opportunity is quite massive in the future because there's going to be a post-pandemic, pent-up demand, which I think is going to be very, very surprising.
Thank you, Danny. And I have a big thank you to say to Danny personally. He doesn't know this, a bit of a conflict of interest, but he's actually given a job to my daughter during the pandemic when she was hoping to be a Cathay flight attendant. So while they were not hiring, Prenetics were. So thank you, Danny, for bringing jobs to Hong Kong.
That I didn't know, huh?
So finally, to our first round of questions, just come to Ignacio, VP Sales and Marketing at a aircraft leasing, very large aircraft leasing company in the region, serving northern, China and the region and globally. So we heard from David Power earlier on resilience in the face of adversity, and resilience. So I just wanted to ask you, because before we came on stage, you shared the important role innovation has played in your company pre-COVID, allowing you to cope better than most through the pandemic. Can you share some of the lessons learned, perhaps market stats and factors, while touching on your own ongoing innovative efforts for your clients and the diversity of your portfolio beyond finance leasing solutions, which have helped you differentiate yourselves and come out with a positive 2020? Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, and good afternoon, everyone. It is a great pleasure to be here with you today. I'll be happy to share with you how Calc navigated this pandemic and also some leadership lessons that we found useful along the way. Leadership is about driving people into achieving a common goal together. You can work on that with a compelling vision, by sharing information, and also by developing a culture for innovation. Calc mission is to become a one-stop, full life-cycle aircraft solution provider with more than 100 customers worldwide. What does this mean, really? A major average lessor could focus their strategies around providing financial and fleet solutions to mostly, let's say, young aircraft. There will be other players who will provide similar solutions, financing and fleet ones, to perhaps some more mature aircraft. At Calc, besides these segments, we focus very much on the aftermarket through value-added services that cover the entire life of the aircraft until retirement. This includes, for example, fleet upgrades, maintenance, repair, and overhaul, aircraft disassembly, recycling, and also trading of spare and components. See, you don't build these capabilities overnight, but investing continuously into innovation. One lesson that we learned is that when uncertain times like this hit, innovations keeps you afloat and you resist it better. It was this diversified business model which allowed us to stay busy in 2020 and to contribute to the industry in such a difficult time. You think about the airlines. They faced such a difficult situation. Their demands collapsed. All kinds of restrictions were set in air traffic. So they had to go into survival mode, protecting their cash, raising new funds. In that situation, what the airline wants from you is basically financing, and if it is a customer, deferral of payments. For a lessor in such a situation, the added risk and uncertainty may less attractive such kind of transactions. So how can we support them at the same time we make it more appealing to us as well? In our case, it was by working on a more complete package that include that piece of financing and payment deferral, but also additional services. For example, last year we closed a deal with China Southern, where we purchased and leased back two A330s. At the same time, we extended the lease of two A321ceos. At the same time, we acquired two old A320 airframes for dismantling in our facilities, following which we sell some parts and recycle some others. It's this way how we manage throughout these round solutions to actually have a quite good 2020. All in all, we deliver 10 aircraft, we signed leases for another 29, we sold 12 aircraft to third parties, and we dismantled a total of 18 aircraft in our facilities in the US and China. That would be for new business during the pandemic. What about current business with our existing customers? Listen, Calc Fleet strategy is based around narrow bodies. More than 90% of our aircraft are narrow bodies, and these are more efficient and more popular for domestic operations that have suffered less. On top of that, more than 80% of our clientele is within China, which is right now one of the strongest, if not the strongest, domestic market, and have also recovered faster than the others. They have already some city pairs at pre-COVID capacity. All in all, we have almost 130 aircraft flying with 35 airlines in 15 countries, but it is definitely this focus on narrow bodies and China would allow us to be ranked #1 in terms of aircraft in service with 95%, and a collection rate that we achieve of also 95%. Looking forward, as I finish, we see our role becoming more and more important in a post-pandemic era, with more airlines welcoming these package solutions. We see an acceleration of used aircraft being phased out, and also passenger aircraft willingness to become freight aircraft, whilst the slots for these are tight and are also pricey. With Cal Group capabilities, we see ourselves well positioned for that. For aviation recovery, we think it's granted. It's a matter of timing. It's going to be uneven and gradual, but we'll definitely see China as the leading charge in the recovery within this region, for which we will capitalize first on our leading position in such a market before resuming our long-term strategy to be overseas. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's important to understand just the sheer size and scale of the China market in the region compared to other countries in Asia, when we talk about Asia. And I think also, Hong Kong's position here as a financial hub serving that market is so important as well. And I think that's a key area of the government to support companies who wish to continue to come to Hong Kong as it's still the gateway to China market for financing these assets. So I want to turn the topic a little bit to sustainability, which we've heard about a little bit earlier. And it's on every CEO's desk these days, whether it's sustainability of the industry itself or sustainability from a green perspective. But what sustainable efforts have each of you had to take or plan to make? Let's start with Ignacio. Can I ask you to share more about your recent success in recycling carbon fiber from dismantling aircraft fuselages for new production, i.e. a great example of a circular economy?
That's right. Sustainability is such an important topic for aviation, and even more right now when we are in the middle of the race to become carbon neutral towards 2050. All the stakeholders are doing their part. You see aircraft OEM making airplanes more and more efficient. Big part of that is through weight, because it's a main contributor to fuel burn and therefore CO2 emissions. So if you look at aircraft 30 years ago, there was basically no carbon fiber on those aircraft. Whilst now the newest jets out there, 787, A350, they reach up to 50% of carbon fiber. So something that we're very proud at Calc is that we have recently achieved in our facilities in the US, in UAM, for the first time, we have managed to fully recycle carbon fiber from commercial aircraft. The resulting materials are suitable for the industry, for many ones, But obviously, we want to put those raw materials to work back into the industry, so we contribute to such a circular, sustainable industry.
Fantastic. So Danny, having experienced the rapid growth over the last 14, 16 months in particular, even though the company is a bit older than that, have you had time to sit down and assess your own sort of sustainable efforts or carbon footprint reduction initiatives going forward?
Yeah, to be honest with you, have not. Yeah, I just still need to catch up in terms of sleep over the last 14 months for myself and a lot of our team members, right? I think for us, we've just been very proud of the fact that we've been able to play such an important role in the community. I mean, there was many nights, last July when the third, fourth wave outbreak, my team and myself, we every time there's a lockdown in Hong Kong, our team doesn't sleep because we actually have to get the results out by 7 a.m. in the morning, and then we actually collect the samples at 8 p.m. until 1 a.m., right? So you can imagine how stressful that is for the team. And our laboratory now operates 24/7. So we process up to 30,000 samples on a daily basis here in Hong Kong, right? So, but certainly, I think moving in the future-wise, that's definitely going to be a topic as we grow and scale to be a growth stage startup.
And what about the new product that you mentioned, the 20-minute result at home?
Yeah,
you touched upon it earlier, but you've got it in your hand there.
Yeah, so this is, we started making investments in this product last September-wise, right? And then so in terms of what's the future in terms of testing, so we haven't launched this product yet, but it will be launched within the next 2 to 3 months here in Hong Kong first. But what you're looking at is actually a prototype for a rapid molecular COVID-19 test that's also able to detect other infectious diseases in the future, right? So the idea here is that we've taken an Oxford University technology, and this looks like a very simple device, but we spent millions of dollars to get this USD-wise, right, to get this product. So the idea here is that this is a single-use capsule. So in the future, you can go to Manning's, Watson's, or wherever and basically buy single-use capsules for COVID-19, flu, STDs, put it into this device. This device does all the reading. So this device is a heater, has PCB boards, has sensors, has Bluetooth, connects to your smartphone. In 20 minutes, you'll be able to get your results on your phone and on this device. And this, you just throw away every single time. So it'll be like an espresso machine in your own home. So we're very excited about this because certainly this technology is already in use in certain a lot of the airports globally, but this will make individuals be able to test at home, right? So you wouldn't need to go to a community test center. This is significantly more accurate than any of the antigen pregnancy style kits that you see. It's about 500x more accurate because this is still a molecular test. So super excited about the product launch because I think this can enable a lot of the normalcy in lives with aviation and travel and events. So we're working a lot of the major events that are coming into Hong Kong for actually testing on the spot.
It's great news now, Danny. Great innovation there, firsthand. And Jolie, we spoke a little bit before as well. When it comes to sustainability, there's been a lot of actions, to be fair, even during pandemic in the industry. When we talk about the uptake of SAF, for instance, sustainable aviation fuel across the world, and in particular, business aviation in the more mature markets like America has been one of the forefront of showing the benefits of this to their clients. And in some ways, they're the perfect clients. They're the clients we can guilt to take up and pay a little bit more, where there's a large gap in the pricing right now. But it's not going to be the silver bullet that cures. And you talked a little bit about carbon offsetting programs, not just for our industry, but also for clients. Like Danny's, in the future, he's going to have carbon offsets for whatever carbon footprint he has. But you mentioned that there's not really a lot viable ones in Asia for the aviation market, or is that not true? Thank you.
I think it's the collective effort in Asia Pacific. I think the manufacturer in business aviation have supported the initiative. They actually develop machine that actually able to take on biofuel and so forth. They support it. And I think a number of our airport facility called the FBO have actually offered those option as well to aircraft that able to uptake those fuel. But I think for Asia Pacific, it's just really diverse. And I think for business aviation, every operator have different resources to do those kind of things. Some smaller operator may not be able to afford, more of a full-fledged program compared to a bigger operator. So I think, it's more collective effort to look at that. And the individual corporation that travel on business jet, they actually do support that initiative, because maybe across their other corporate spectrum of activity, they already support those initiative on carbon offsetting. So I think, it would be very good to have more collective efforts on focus on that. And then I think communicate to the customer who travel on business jets, and with that across, and I think we will be able to raise the awareness for Asia Pacific region.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping the new Business Aviation Centre announcement of the expansion, 400 million Hong Kong dollar expansion, will include SAF being made available here in Hong Kong to business aviation. But I want to finish with a very quick fire, sharp and short answers, please, from my panelists, due to time. But has your priorities changed from a work-life balance perspective? And what piece of advice or one tip would you share to the audience as leaders of a lesson you've learned during this crisis that you plan to take forward with you? So maybe kick off with Jolie.
Yeah, work-life balance, I think, certainly, I think we all agree we're able to spend more time with family during COVID, which is actually one of the added benefit, despite all the challenges. I think, for business, the agility is very important. We need to be able to be very agile to make changes. And I think this time has really taught us that is what we've been doing for the last 20 years may not work again. So I think, our mentality really need to change how to deal with big crises like this. And I think from an organization perspective, it's becoming more important in the training of, corporate agility. So I think that's really what taught me personally to, very quickly to be able to look at what are the challenges we're facing and how are we going to deal with it, and how do we continue to sustain a business environment that's viable for everybody. And
Danny, apart from regaining your sleep, what other tips would you give?
Maybe I will probably say something a little bit controversial here, yeah? So, yeah, I've always been in startups, right? So this is my 4th company I've started from scratch. I don't believe in work-life balance. I believe in work-life integration. I know very successful entrepreneurs globally, and the amount of hours we put in is the result that we'll get back, right? Especially if we want to change or have such innovation or such impact in the markets. We have to integrate the life into work-wise, but certainly work comes first, but certainly we just have to prioritize some of the elements with family, etc. But it depends ultimately what you want to achieve. If you want to achieve something great-wise, there's no work-life balance, right? Trust me, I know so many global, very famous entrepreneurs. It's the same. So, but that's not for everyone, right? So even when we hire people, we tell people straight front, hey, if you want a work-life balance, don't work here. Not for you. But if you want to create something that's very meaningful, that you have self-motivation, and you want to be the best versions of yourself, and you learn from really smart and talented people, then it's the place to be, yeah?
Nacho?
From a business perspective, I think we have another simple point, another data of evidence that black swans exist in our industry, and it's simply more a matter of when rather than if it's going to happen again. So my piece of advice here, I don't know if this has changed my mind or just reinforced it, is that whenever you're planning for the future, plan what are you going to do when something like this hit our industry again. On a personal basis, I just know myself a little bit better, because I know for sure I don't want to spend another 3 weeks in a hotel room quarantine in my life.
And just finalize my own thoughts as well. I mean, maybe from a market tip perspective, because obviously we have a room full of aviators, and I think GBA, Greater Bay Area, you hear a lot about it. Maybe it's gone a little bit quieter during this past year, but that's going to be the engine that fires up the recovery, especially from a Hong Kong perspective, and also the connectivity of GBA with ASEAN. There is a real push now to see how we can connect those dots, and aviation is going to be part of that solution, and certainly narrow body will be in large demand. So that's a tip on the business side. On a personal front, maybe I also pivoted, at the very beginning, probably just before COVID, in fact, just before some of the social unrest kicked off, I left my full-time employment with my wonderful former boss, Denzel White, who's here in the studio, another half Irishman, and decided to go out on my own and do another startup with Air Mobi, who contracted with a 53-year-old think tank in the region. And one of the things that I've been trying to push to say, what is it we can actually deliver as a think tank that has all connectivity without industry? and that was pushing for reopening of borders safely. And that was pushing the IATA pass, the travel pass, as part of the solution. And I would also be pushing things like the genetics testing kits as well going forward. I think we have the talent, not just in our industry, but globally, to solve the solution. Solve the problem with a solution. But we just got to get government listening louder in more than just one country, but across the region. And it's not going well in certain countries at the moment, but I'm sure they'll get through it. So I just want to ask you to give a quick round of applause to my panelists. Thank you. Back to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Hello. Hello, hello. Thanks, Mike, and thanks to those panelists.